On September 3, 2018, a man was found lifeless in room 913 of the Al-Mashtal Hotel in Gaza City. That man was Nasir Karim, whispered among militants as the Tunnel Man, an architect of subterranean warfare. His death baffled everyone. The scene was ordinary at first glance: curtains half drawn, a suitcase by the bed, untouched breakfast outside the door. Yet something felt staged. Hotel staff muttered about unseen visitors, silent corridors, and the eerie precision of an invisible hand. Nasir was no ordinary guest. He was Hamas's clandestine engineer, the mastermind of reinforced passageways burrowing beneath Gaza's borders. To his allies, he was a genius strategist. To his enemies, particularly Mossad, he was a shadow that needed erasing. The discovery spread like wildfire. Hamas operatives sealed the hotel within minutes, blocking journalists. Rumors swirled: poisoning, strangulation, staged heart attack. Each possibility carried the scent of espionage. Each theory pulled observers deeper into a maze of political murder and concealed agendas. This was not merely a death. It was a signal. A warning that the long arm of Israel's intelligence services had pierced deep into hostile territory. The mystery now was not whether Mossad was involved, but how they had done it. The death of Nasir Karim was not just the silencing of a man, it was the silencing of a strategy. His tunnels had shifted the balance of warfare, moving Hamas from exposed streets to hidden arteries beneath the earth. His loss meant disruption. For Israel, the tunnels represented a nightmare. Each reinforced shaft was a concealed dagger aimed at its border towns, military posts, and civilian settlements. Every meter dug was a gamble with blood. Eliminating their chief architect was not vengeance, it was national survival. Beyond the battlefield, the implications were vast. Intelligence agencies worldwide studied Gaza as a case study in urban insurgency. If Mossad could reach room 913 undetected, it meant boundaries were illusions: walls, checkpoints, even armies. None could shield a marked man. Regional powers watched with narrowed eyes. Iran, funding Hamas with weapons and money, wondered what Israeli reach meant for its own operatives. Egypt, ever wary of Gaza's instability, feared spillover. The United States quietly assessed the fallout, aware that assassination was also a message to them. What made Nasir's death significant was timing. Peace negotiations were frozen. Hamas's leadership was fractured. Israel faced pressure from the north with Hezbollah. The erasure of the Tunnel Man was not merely tactical, it was surgical, a strike designed to tip an entire chessboard of conflict. Who entered room 913 that night, leaving no trace behind except silence? Was it a single assassin in disguise, or an entire team operating with invisible precision? Did the hotel cameras capture them, or were the lenses blinded by expertise? Why did it happen in Gaza, inside a fortified stronghold of Hamas? Was it audacity, or was it theater? A deliberate demonstration that no fortress is impregnable. Did Mossad mean to kill only a man, or shatter a myth? Could the Tunnel Man's death have been prevented by his own comrades? Did betrayal lurk within his inner circle, or did technology outmatch loyalty? Was it poison, electrical current, or an injection that left his body lifeless? And most crucial of all, why now? Why strike in September, when the region braced for another political storm? Was this an isolated operation, or part of a larger mosaic unfolding quietly across the Middle East's battlefields of shadows? Nasir Karim was born on March 11, 1974, in the narrow alleys of Gaza City's Shuja'iyya district, a neighborhood scarred by shelling and poverty. His childhood unfolded under the weight of blockades, air raids, and curfews that shaped his earliest memories. His family was large, traditional, and devout. His father, a tailor with rough hands and quiet dignity, stitched garments by candlelight when electricity failed. His mother balanced bread baking with whispered lessons of resilience, teaching her children that survival was itself defiance. From the start, Nasir displayed unusual patience. Unlike his brothers who sought football matches in crumbling streets, he sat with discarded radios, unscrewing them, peering at their insides. He was captivated not by play but by hidden mechanisms beneath the surface. School was both refuge and battlefield. Teachers noticed his gift for geometry, the way he could draw tunnels and bridges across margins of notebooks. Israeli incursions often interrupted classes, yet Nasir's sketches became more intricate each time. Even destruction sharpened his imagination. By adolescence, he was already known in his quarter as the boy who fixes things. Broken bicycles, snapped water pipes, tangled wires. Neighbors brought them to him. His hands learned improvisation, his mind learned efficiency, and his reputation began quietly spreading. Nasir Karim's ideology crystallized slowly, drawn from sermons in crowded mosques and whispers in coffee houses thick with cigarette smoke. He saw Gaza as a cage, each blockade and checkpoint convincing him that resistance was not choice, but sacred obligation. Yet unlike fiery preachers or militant leaders, Nasir was not theatrical. He believed silence was power. Friends recalled his calm presence, his tendency to listen longer than he spoke, always observing, always calculating. Emotion for him was carefully rationed. He carried peculiar habits. He avoided rich food, claiming heavy meals dulled clarity. He drank tea obsessively, sometimes brewing 4 cups through sleepless nights, sketching lines on graph paper under dim light. Sugar cubes stacked near him like miniature barricades. Despite his secretive life, Nasir adored puzzles. Wooden mazes, chessboards, even riddles scribbled by neighborhood children became his escape. For him, problem-solving was leisure and war practice alike. Every solved puzzle fed his conviction that ingenuity could outmatch brute force. This mixture of austere beliefs and quirky rituals set him apart. To followers, he was both ascetic and engineer, warrior and tinkerer. His ideology was hardened steel, but his personal quirks revealed a man whose world hinged on quiet precision. In Gaza's labyrinthine alleys, Nasir Karim was known as Al-Rajul al-Nafaq, the Tunnel Man. The nickname began as a whisper among fighters, who watched him vanish underground for days, emerging dusty yet triumphant with blueprints etched into his memory. To comrades, the name carried reverence. To Israeli intelligence, it was a red flag, pinned to dossiers marked high-value target. Nasir himself accepted it with detached pride, seeing the title not as vanity, but as destiny's grim assignment. Children in Shuja'iyya called him Uncle Pipes, laughing as he repaired leaking water lines with speed. He chuckled, but rarely lingered. His self-image rested not on neighborhood affection, but on the belief that he was Gaza's hidden architect. He once told a confidant, "I am not a soldier. I am a foundation. Soldiers crumble. Foundations endure." That self-conception, engineer rather than fighter, shaped his aura. He viewed himself not as a weapon, but the mind that enables weapons. The transition from neighborhood fixer to underground strategist began in the mid-1990s. Gaza's streets erupted with clashes after Oslo's faltering promises. Nasir, then in his 20s, saw broken accords not as mistakes but betrayals, proof that survival required self-reliant resistance. He was drawn into Hamas through quiet invitations. At first, his role was minor, mending electrical systems in safe houses, rewiring radios for secure transmissions. Yet every repair pulled him deeper into the movement's clandestine veins, where utility blurred into militancy. By 1998, Nasir was designing rudimentary escape routes beneath homes in Shuja'iyya. These early tunnels were crude, damp shafts propped by scavenged wood, but they gave Hamas fighters cover during Israeli raids. For Nasir, Earth itself became weapon and shield simultaneously. He avoided frontline firefights, claiming his mind was sharper underground. Political leaders noticed his pragmatism. They praised his discipline, his ability to vanish when needed. Nasir's refusal of glory intrigued them. He sought no stage, only blueprints, and this anonymity proved invaluable. The final step into militancy came after Operation Defensive Shield in 2002. Images of destroyed homes hardened him. He vowed that Gaza's defenses must move beneath rubble, invisible yet invincible. From then, Nasir was no longer helper but Hamas's subterranean visionary. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict was the crucible that forged Nasir Karim's life. Decades of displacement, occupation, and uprisings meant every child in Gaza inherited not just poverty, but a battlefield. For Nasir, this larger struggle was the backdrop of every decision. The First Intifada of 1987 introduced him to stone-throwing youths facing tanks. The Second Intifada, beginning in 2000, was bloodier, with suicide bombings and targeted assassinations. Each uprising hardened divisions, deepened wounds, and convinced groups like Hamas that negotiations were illusions. Gaza itself became a prison wrapped in barbed wire. The blockade imposed after Hamas seized power in 2007 suffocated its economy. Electricity blackouts, food shortages, and ruined infrastructure created desperation. Nasir's tunnels were not only for war, but for bread. Israel viewed Hamas as an existential threat, especially its military wing, the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. Every rocket fired from Gaza provoked airstrikes, and every airstrike planted seeds for more rockets. A cycle of violence spun endlessly, grinding civilians between its wheels. Beyond the borders, regional conflicts intensified the stakes. Hezbollah in Lebanon mirrored Hamas's tactics. Iran funneled cash and arms into Gaza. Egypt struggled to balance its treaties with Israel and its volatile frontier with Hamas. Each nation's move shifted pressure inside Gaza's crucible. Israel stood as the relentless adversary. Successive governments viewed Hamas as a hydra whose every head must be severed. To Israeli intelligence, figures like Nasir Karim were not just engineers, but architects of existential danger, and thus elimination became strategic necessity. Iran, meanwhile, became Hamas's principal patron. Through covert networks, Tehran funneled money, weapons, and expertise. For Iran, Gaza was a proxy front, a pressure point against Israel. Nasir's tunnels served not only Hamas but also Iran's vision of regional leverage. Egypt occupied a paradoxical role. Officially, it upheld peace treaties with Israel, yet its Rafah border crossings leaked supplies and militants into Gaza. Cairo feared Hamas's influence spilling into Sinai, but also exploited tunnels for economic and political bargaining power. The United States publicly condemned Hamas, designating it a terrorist organization, while quietly monitoring Israel's assassination campaigns. Washington's policy was twofold: defend Israel's security while avoiding regional conflagration. Nasir's death, if tied to Mossad, risked complicating American diplomacy in volatile corridors. Qatar and Turkey offered political cover and humanitarian aid, framing Hamas as resistance rather than terror. Their support, though limited militarily, gave the group legitimacy abroad. Each statement, each dollar, strengthened the narrative that Nasir's work was internationally consequential. Nasir Karim mattered because he turned Earth into a weapon. While rockets could be intercepted and fighters exposed, tunnels were elusive, shifting warfare into dimensions technology struggled to detect. His blueprints became Hamas's shield, giving them endurance against overwhelming Israeli firepower. His tunnels were multi-purpose marvels. They ferried food and medicine when blockades choked Gaza. They smuggled weapons under Egypt's nose. They provided surprise entry points for raids inside Israel. Each tunnel blurred the line between humanitarian artery and military dagger. For Hamas leadership, Nasir symbolized independence. He proved that Gaza could out-engineer its isolation, bending terrain to its will. Every successful excavation elevated him within the movement, until whispers suggested his tunnels were as valuable as the rockets themselves. To Israel, he was an intolerable risk. Intelligence officials argued that eliminating Nasir would not simply disrupt projects, but demoralize Hamas's infrastructure teams. His knowledge was irreplaceable, his methods difficult to replicate. Killing him was akin to severing a nerve in Hamas's body. On the international stage, Nasir became emblematic of asymmetrical warfare. Analysts in Washington, Cairo, and Tehran referenced his tunnels in think tank papers. His existence proved how one man's ingenuity could stretch conflict far beyond conventional battlefields, forcing governments to rethink counterinsurgency itself. Nasir Karim's first brushes with crime were not spectacular explosions or headline attacks. They were quiet experiments. Illegal generators wired into Gaza's grid, smuggled copper coils hidden in crates, clandestine digging beneath curfews. Small infractions foreshadowed far darker ambitions taking shape underground. By 1999, Israeli intelligence flagged his activities. Informants reported a young engineer gathering explosives knowledge. Arrest came swiftly during a raid on his Shujaiya workshop. Soldiers found pipes, detonators, and maps. For Israel, this was evidence of militancy. For Hamas, it was recruitment material. Nasir's first imprisonment was brief, a 6-month sentence that served as initiation rather than deterrent. Inside Israeli detention, he encountered seasoned militants who recognized his talent. They urged him to refine his skills, planting seeds that prison could not contain. Upon release, surveillance intensified. Yet Nasir adapted, avoiding flashy operations. He cloaked himself as a technician repairing water pumps, but beneath the disguise he expanded his knowledge of explosives and tunneling. Each arrest attempt revealed his growing ability to vanish into Gaza's shadows. By the early 2000s, he was no longer merely a tinkerer caught bending wires. He was a strategist in gestation, marked by authorities as a repeat offender. Each arrest hardened him, each interrogation refined him, and each release deepened his resolve. Nasir's second arrest in 2002 plunged him into harsher conditions. Transferred to Ashkelon prison, he endured interrogations described by former cellmates as relentless. Sleep deprivation, blinding lights, and hours of questioning carved deep scars, but they also sharpened his resistance. Claims of torture circulated among Hamas circles. Supporters whispered of beatings and electric shocks, of psychological tricks designed to shatter resolve. Israeli authorities denied systematic abuse, yet every rumor magnified Nasir's stature, transforming him from prisoner into emblem of defiance. Inside confinement, he developed coded communication systems. He taught inmates to pass notes in folded bread, to scratch tunnel diagrams into soap. Each survival trick reinforced his legend, an engineer adapting even captivity into an extension of warfare. By his release in 2004, Nasir emerged hardened, convinced that Israel's prisons were universities of resistance. What was meant to break him instead became crucible. Torture, whether real or embellished, was recast by Hamas as proof that the tunnel man could not be bent. After his 2004 release, Nasir Karim was quickly absorbed into the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing. He entered not as a gunman, but as a technical specialist, entrusted with rebuilding infrastructure shattered by Israeli raids and relentless blockades. His role expanded rapidly. Commanders recognized his uncanny ability to repurpose scrap metal into explosives or household chemicals into detonators. What others dismissed as junk, Nasir transformed into weapons. In a besieged Gaza, ingenuity was currency, and Nasir minted it endlessly. By 2006, whispers claimed he had established his own subterranean engineering cell. It was not an independent faction, but a specialized unit within Hamas, focused entirely on digging, reinforcing, and concealing tunnels. For comrades, this was revolution. For Israel, it was alarm bell. This cell attracted young recruits, engineers, electricians, even masons, each trained under Nasir's methodical discipline. He demanded precision, patience, and silence. Mistakes meant collapses. Carelessness meant discovery. His group blended militancy with craftsmanship, creating passageways that were both tactical lifelines and architectural feats. Through this network, Nasir's influence grew. He was no longer a solitary fixer, but the nucleus of a movement within a movement. Hamas valued his unit not for spectacle, but sustainability. He was building continuity underground while battles raged above. By 2007, Nasir's tunnels were no longer primitive hideouts. They became arteries of smuggling, carrying rifles, explosives, even livestock beneath Gaza's sands. Every successful passage undermined Israel's blockade, bolstering Hamas's arsenal and turning Nasir into the unseen architect of Gaza's lifeline. Kidnappings soon followed. In June 2006, Corporal Gilad Shalit was captured through a cross-border tunnel raid, an operation later attributed to Nasir's designs. The abduction electrified Hamas's ranks, proving tunnels could deliver leverage far beyond rockets. Hostages were bargaining chips with global weight. Killings amplified his reputation further. Fighters emerging from Nasir's shafts ambushed Israeli patrols, vanishing underground before retaliation arrived. These attacks spread fear disproportionate to their scale. Israel realized they were not just battling militants, but facing an underground ghost war led by one man. Nasir's methods blurred warfare with survival. He justified smuggling food beside rifles, arguing both sustained resistance. He claimed kidnappings were not brutality, but negotiation. To his followers, he was strategist and provider. To his enemies, he was murderer cloaked in engineering blueprints. By 2010, tunnels bore his unmistakable signature: reinforced arches, hidden exits, air vents disguised as wells. Each success emboldened Hamas. Each failure tightened Israel's crosshairs. Nasir was no longer anonymous. He was an insurgent engineer whose fingerprints stained blood and sand alike. On June 25, 2006, Nasir's tunnel delivered its most infamous outcome: the capture of Corporal Gilad Shalit. Fighters emerged near Kerem Shalom crossing, killing 2 soldiers and vanishing underground with Shalit. The abduction stunned Israel and cemented Nasir's reputation as mastermind. In 2008, during Operation Cast Lead, Israeli tanks rolled into Gaza. Nasir's tunnels enabled ambushes in Zaytun and Shuja'iyya. Fighters surfaced behind armored columns, launching RPGs before melting back into the earth. For military planners, tunnels multiplied Hamas's reach exponentially. By 2012, his network expanded near Rafah. Egyptian authorities uncovered dozens of shafts smuggling weapons from Sinai. Intelligence reports tied most directly to Nasir's designs, citing reinforced concrete linings and concealed entrances. Cairo protested publicly while quietly tolerating tunnels for economic kickbacks. In 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, Israeli forces discovered dozens of cross-border tunnels. One reached Kibbutz Nahal Oz, where Hamas fighters killed 5 Israeli soldiers. Forensics later matched architectural signatures to Nasir's methods: precise measurements, ventilation shafts, and structural reinforcements characteristic of his style. Each incident escalated the stakes. What began as local engineering now dictated regional strategies. Every raid, every abduction, every ambush whispered the same truth. Room 913's occupant was not an anonymous militant. He was Gaza's subterranean general, orchestrating war beneath Israel's feet. By 2010, Nasir Karim's name circulated across classified cables in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Cairo. He was no longer a shadow in Gaza's alleys. He was a code name on most wanted rosters, his tunnels threatening entire border strategies and regional stability. Israeli intelligence placed him among their top priorities. Dossiers labeled him architect of subterranean war. Satellite images and intercepted calls attempted to track him, yet Nasir's underground lifestyle outpaced surveillance. Each failed lead only sharpened Israel's determination to neutralize him permanently. The United States listed Hamas as a foreign terrorist organization, and by extension, Nasir was tagged an international outlaw. Think tank reports in Washington mentioned him obliquely as key technical operative. His work became case studies in asymmetrical warfare strategy. Egypt considered him a destabilizing force, suspecting his tunnels of enabling insurgents in Sinai. Officials publicly condemned smuggling while privately studying his methods. To them, Nasir was both threat and teacher, a cautionary tale of how engineering could destabilize entire frontiers. Within Hamas, his notoriety was paradoxical. Revered for his skill, yet dangerous for drawing Israeli focus, Nasir's survival became a symbol of divine protection. Each year he lived, propaganda posters amplified his myth. Yet legends also paint targets, and his legend blazed brightly. The first serious attempt came in 2011. An Israeli drone tracked a convoy near Rafah. Missiles struck 2 vehicles, reducing them to flaming husks. Nasir, traveling separately on a motorcycle, escaped. Hamas hailed it as divine providence. Israel seethed at failure. In 2013, intelligence reported that Mossad agents laced supplies moving through a tunnel with slow-acting toxin. Several Hamas operatives sickened, but Nasir survived untouched. Rumors swirled he had switched his food, wary of betrayal. The incident deepened his paranoia. By 2015, Israeli commandos staged a night raid near Khan Yunis. Gunfire erupted inside a suspected tunnel shaft. Reports claimed Nasir slipped away through a concealed exit, vanishing beneath the sand as if the earth itself conspired to shield him. 2 years later, in 2017, explosions ripped through a tunnel entrance minutes after Nasir had inspected it. Witnesses swore he walked away calmly, dust clinging to his beard. For Israel, the near miss was infuriating. For Hamas, it cemented his myth. Each attempt revealed lessons. He altered routines, never sleeping twice in the same safe house, never driving predictable routes. He trusted few, shunned crowds, and tested meals with meticulous care. Survival became ritual. Assassination loomed like weather, inescapable, yet constantly evaded by his precision. By 2018, even Hamas leaders whispered that Nasir's survival was borrowed time. Each assassination attempt grew closer, each near miss tighter. Legends painted him untouchable, yet whispers hinted that Mossad's patience was eternal, and its reach extended beyond borders, beyond walls. Intelligence analysts described him as a walking countdown. His importance made him indispensable, but indispensability breeds vulnerability. Every tunnel he designed, every operation he enabled, added weight to the target painted on his back. Escape routes narrowed to inevitability. In Gaza's streets, children still called him Tunnel Man. Fighters still looked to him for plans. But behind closed doors, allies wondered not if Mossad would strike, but when, and whether his death would collapse their fragile subterranean empire. In late August 2018, flights arrived quietly at Cairo International Airport. Among ordinary travelers were men and women carrying false passports, European identities crafted in Tel Aviv's deepest vaults. Their luggage carried no weapons, only disguises, electronics, and the patience of hunters. They traveled separately, blending into the tide of tourists, aid workers, and journalists. Some posed as contractors bound for Sinai projects, others as humanitarian staff. Each carried fragments of the mission, unaware of the full picture beyond coded instructions. Crossing into Gaza required choreography. Egyptian contacts, whether complicit or manipulated, ensured papers passed inspection. The operatives filtered through Rafah's chaotic crossing, where sweat, dust, and noise masked their passage. By September, they were ghosts inside Gaza's dense urban maze. Safe houses awaited them, nondescript apartments with peeling paint and humming refrigerators masking concealed transmitters. Inside, laptops lit maps of Gaza City, overlaid with hotel schematics. Room 9113 of the Al-Mashtal Hotel glowed red. The tunnel man was already checked in, oblivious. Their arrival was not fanfare but stillness. No bullets fired, no alarms raised. The operation's power lay in silence. Mossad operatives descending not as soldiers but as whispers, infiltrating Gaza's heart without leaving even the faintest tremor of warning. By September 1, 2018, operatives began checking into the Al-Mashtal Hotel under carefully woven identities. A German tourist, a French business consultant, even a Lebanese journalist, all false masks concealing Mossad's presence, each reservation a stitch tightening the circle around room 913. They requested rooms on adjacent floors, citing ocean views or quieter corridors. Housekeeping staff noticed nothing unusual. Suitcases contained cameras disguised as toiletries, lockpicking kits hidden inside shaving kits, laptops encrypted beyond recognition. Every item was curated for invisibility. One operative established a temporary surveillance hub inside his room. A camera lens concealed behind an air freshener monitored the hallway outside Nasir's door. Another posed as a fitness enthusiast, jogging past the room to note guards' schedules. Hotel employees became unwitting informants. A bellboy, bribed with crisp euros, confirmed Nasir's irregular meal deliveries. A waitress reported his fondness for late-night tea. These fragments, stitched together, offered Mossad what satellites could not: a daily rhythm of the tunnel man. For days they observed silently. Every knock, every tray removed, every light switched became part of a profile. Surveillance was not just technical, it was psychological. By the 5th day, operatives knew Nasir's patterns better than his closest comrades. On September 3, 2018, Dawn broke over Gaza with the usual unease of checkpoints and drone hums. Inside Al-Mashtal Hotel, Nasir Karim began his morning with black tea and a notebook, unaware the day would script his final chapter. At 9:15 a.m., an operative disguised as a visiting journalist lingered in the lobby, snapping photographs of architecture. His lens caught every guard rotation, every elevator use. Another operative pretended to read newspapers, eyes fixed on room 913's corridor. By 1 p.m., Nasir returned from a discreet meeting near Gaza's port. Surveillance noted his nervous glances, the way he touched his beard repeatedly. Operatives logged his lunch order: chicken, rice, mint tea. Patterns mattered. Even food revealed predictability useful to assassins. At 4 p.m., electricity flickered, a planned disruption. Maintenance crews rushed through hallways. Among them walked Mossad agents in blue overalls carrying toolkits. They tapped walls, adjusted panels, but their true task was scouting pathways for insertion into room 913's lock system. By 7:45 p.m., the hotel glowed under warm lights. Nasir retreated to his room, carrying files tucked beneath his arm. He dismissed a phone call curtly, paced twice across the carpet, then sat by the window. The hunters closed in. At 10:30 p.m., final movements began. Two operatives took positions in stairwells, one near the lobby, another on the rooftop with signal jammers ready. In Gaza City's humid night, the Al-Mashtal became a stage. Each player rehearsed for a silent execution. The lock on room 913 was bypassed not with brute force, but with elegance. An operative inserted a custom keycard emulator, a device smaller than a wallet. Within seconds, the green light blinked, and the door yielded like a whisper. Inside, silence was everything. Agents carried fiber optic scopes disguised as phone chargers, slipping them under the door seam to confirm emptiness before entry. Noise-canceling mats muffled footsteps. Even air vents became conduits for tiny cameras feeding encrypted laptops. Their arsenal blended technology with deception. Syringes held fast-acting paralytics, labeled as vitamins. Gloves were dusted to prevent trace DNA. Laptops carried malware designed to erase hotel CCTV logs. Every object bore dual lives, innocuous by sight, lethal by intent. Communication flowed through bone conduction earpieces, invisible beneath hair. Agents never spoke aloud, only subtle head tilts acknowledged commands. Radio silence minimized detection. A rooftop jammer severed cell signals temporarily, freezing outside surveillance while operations inside room 913 unfolded unhindered. This was not Hollywood violence. It was bureaucracy turned surgical. Locks, wires, chemicals, disguises, all curated by a state that turned assassination into administration. Mossad's strength was not firepower, but detail, the ability to erase lives as efficiently as signatures. At 11:02 p.m., a hotel cleaner wheeled her cart toward room 913. An operative, dressed as maintenance staff, intercepted her with a polite smile, guiding her toward another hallway. For a heartbeat, the mission teetered on discovery, then steadied again. Moments later, Nasir unexpectedly ordered tea. A waitress knocked, tray trembling. Hidden agents froze in shadow, knives of silence drawn. Nasir accepted the tea, closing the door with absent care. The tray's clink echoed like a gunshot in waiting ears. At 11:37 p.m., Hamas security men passed down the corridor. Their boots struck rhythmically, pausing briefly near room 913. Agents held breath, muscles coiled. The guards continued, oblivious, leaving only the smell of cologne and cigarettes trailing behind. Suspense fractured. Every second expanded into eternity, a mission scripted with precision bent under the chaos of real life. The operatives knew that a single wrong gesture, a misplaced object, could unmask them. The silence of Gaza's night became thunder. At 11:59 p.m., room 913's lock surrendered again. Two operatives slipped inside, moving like shadows across the carpet. Nasir Karim stirred faintly in bed, teacup empty on the nightstand. Sleep had claimed him, but the hunters arrived relentless. A syringe glinted briefly in lamplight. Fast-acting paralytic slid into his bloodstream, silencing muscle and breath without struggle. No noise escaped. His body slackened, chest rising shallow, eyes flickering once before dimming into the permanence of stillness. The scene was meticulously staged, bedside items arranged, covers smoothed. Pulse stopped, yet the room suggested natural passing. A book was placed near his hand, curtains drawn slightly ajar. Death scripted as sleep, crafted for ambiguity rather than spectacle. At 12:11 a.m., agents exfiltrated silently, leaving only still air behind. Nasir's reign beneath Gaza's sands ended not in battle or explosion, but in curated quiet. His final weapon, a myth of invincibility, was erased by Mossad's artistry of silence. At dawn on September 4, 2018, hotel staff knocked gently on room 913's door. Breakfast remained untouched. Concern turned to dread when a master key opened the lock. Inside, Nasir Karim lay motionless, body arranged in unsettling tranquility. The first response was confusion. Security rushed in, expecting struggle, but found none. No signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no gunfire residue. To untrained eyes, the tunnel man had died peacefully in his sleep. Within minutes, whispers spread through corridors. Hamas operatives sealed the premises, ejecting guests and confiscating staff phones. The room transformed from hotel suite into crime scene, its silence vibrating with suspicion that Mossad had reached Gaza's heart undetected. By noon, Gaza City buzzed with speculation. Some insisted heart failure. Others murmured poison, injection, or suffocation. Journalists, barred from entry, pieced together fragments. The absence of clarity only deepened intrigue. How could the most hunted man die so quietly? Doctors at Gaza's central morgue examined Nasir's body under harsh fluorescent lights. Initial reports suggested cardiac arrest, yet deeper inspection revealed faint puncture near the neck, almost invisible. Tissue samples hinted at foreign compounds, traces inconsistent with natural death, consistent with injection. Rumors swirled instantly. Hamas claimed poison, citing history of Mossad's chemical assassinations. Israeli officials denied involvement, dismissing evidence as speculative. Forensic teams struggled, their equipment outdated, their laboratories crippled by blockade. Definitive conclusions remained elusive, feeding conspiracy instead of closure. The autopsy described lungs collapsed without trauma, organs intact, no internal bleeding. Pathologists debated whether paralysis agents were used, substances designed to vanish rapidly from bloodstream, leaving minimal traces. In espionage, absence of proof often served as perfect signature. By evening, medical files were sealed. Hamas leaders forbade further release, citing national security. Outside the morgue, grieving crowds demanded answers. The tunnel man's body lay shrouded, both evidence and enigma. Science had spoken in whispers, but whispers were drowned by suspicion. Hotel managers reluctantly released security footage. At first, nothing seemed extraordinary. Blurred figures in hallways, guests entering rooms, cleaners pushing carts. But investigators noticed patterns, faces recurring on different floors, guests with inconsistent luggage, strangers leaving before dawn without checking out. One man appeared as German tourist Hans Müller. Another registered as French consultant Pierre Laurent. Cross-checks revealed the passports authentic in appearance, but fraudulent in issuance. European governments soon disavowed the documents, furious that their identities had been weaponized. Analysis uncovered meticulous choreography. Suspects never moved together yet appeared within overlapping frames around room 913. Some carried small toolboxes, others laptops. Each seemed ordinary alone. Together, they resembled a net tightening around Nasir during his final days. Leaked still images circulated through regional media. Faces of operatives stared from front pages across Gaza and Cairo. Diplomatic embassies fielded angry calls. Citizens demanded answers. How had Mossad so brazenly hijacked sovereign identities, turning passports into instruments of assassination? The scandal rippled outward. Britain, Germany, and France condemned the misuse. Israel issued neither confirmation nor denial, retreating into silence. Yet every denial only reinforced suspicion. The CCTV tapes, grainy yet damning, told a story officials refused to acknowledge openly. The discovery of forged passports ignited diplomatic fury. European capitals summoned Israeli ambassadors demanding explanations. Public condemnations framed the assassination as reckless violation of sovereignty. Privately, intelligence officials admitted grudging admiration for Mossad's precision, even as governments denounced the brazen abuse of international trust. Qatar and Turkey amplified outrage, branding Nasir Karim a martyr of resistance. Iranian media seized the narrative, broadcasting his funeral footage alongside fiery editorials. For Tehran, the killing was evidence that Israel's shadow wars stretched into every Arab stronghold unchecked. Egypt walked a delicate line. Officials condemned the assassination publicly while tightening surveillance along Rafah privately, wary of further exposure. Cairo feared destabilization more than Nasir's death, calculating responses carefully to avoid becoming entangled in Mossad's invisible battlefield. The United States remained cautious. Statements emphasized Israel's right to self-defense, while urging restraint. Leaked cables suggested Washington knew in advance of Mossad's pursuit, but distanced itself diplomatically. The assassination deepened regional polarization, reinforcing perceptions of Gaza as laboratory of clandestine conflict. For Israel, fallout was anticipated. Ambassadors weathered expulsions, critics shouted in parliaments, yet Mossad's silence spoke louder. In intelligence circles, the operation was declared success. Target eliminated, legend dismantled. In political arenas, denials became the price of victory purchased in shadows. Behind the operatives, behind the disguises, stretched an invisible hierarchy, the phantom bureaucracy. Mossad was not simply agents in corridors. It was clerks approving budgets, technicians forging passports, analysts sifting intercepted calls. Assassination was paperwork, stamped forms hidden beneath national security seals. This machinery thrived on anonymity. No single decision carried fingerprints. Layers of authorization blurred accountability, ensuring leaders could deny involvement. The bureaucracy functioned like a shadow parliament, its committees voting silently on who would live and who would disappear. History whispered similar tales. The same invisible empire orchestrated strikes in Paris, Dubai, Beirut. Each operation bore the mark of unseen administrators who turned intelligence into policy, policy into missions, missions into death, staged as coincidence. Bureaucracy masked blood. For Nasir Karim, room 913 was his end. But behind that locked door stood decades of perfected process, salaries paid, logistics filed, disguises procured. Mossad's true strength lay not in assassins' hands but in clerks' pens moving across classified paper. They were not soldiers in uniform but phantoms in plain clothes. Mossad's elite units, Kaidan, Caesarea, Metzada, were whispered like ghost stories. Each team carried a reputation as sharp as any blade, their mission stitched across decades of silent warfare. Kaidan, the strike unit, specialized in close-quarter eliminations. Caesarea managed surveillance, weaving electronic nets invisible to their prey. Metzada orchestrated sabotage, making accidents appear inevitable. Together, these invisible legions moved like mythic archetypes: hunter, watcher, saboteur, operating beyond borders and beyond law. To outsiders, they were nameless faces on forged passports. To insiders, they were craftsmen of assassination, bound not by glory, but by procedure. Their anonymity was armor, their mobility weapon. Where governments hesitated, these legions acted with mechanical certainty. Every mission left echoes: burnt cars, poisoned drinks, vanishing bodies. Yet the operatives themselves dissolved into fog, unrecorded, unrewarded. They were the state's silent chorus, sustaining Israel's doctrine that enemies could be touched anywhere, anytime, without warning and without footprint. In 1973, Mossad pursued Black September operatives across Europe after the Munich massacre. One night in Lillehammer, Norway, a Moroccan waiter was mistaken for a terrorist. He died in a hail of bullets, and the mission's error echoed infamously. In 1997, operatives in Amman attempted to poison Hamas leader Khaled Mashal. The toxin entered his ear, but Jordanian security captured 2 agents. Israel was forced to deliver the antidote, a rare humiliation that revealed espionage's fragile balance between precision and disaster. In 2010, Dubai police unraveled the killing of Mahmoud al-Mabhouh. CCTV footage caught operatives disguised as tennis players, tracking him through corridors. Forged passports sparked global outrage, yet Mossad's message was unmistakable. Even luxury hotels offered no sanctuary. Each mission left questions unanswered. Who approved the hits? How many failures lay buried in silence? The ghosts of past operations hovered around Nasir Karim's death, reminding the world that assassinations are never isolated. They are chapters in a long, unfinished ledger of vengeance. At the highest level sat men in suits, leaders cloaked in rhetoric. They spoke of security, of deterrence, of justice. Yet behind speeches lingered signatures authorizing silent deaths, turning individuals into expendable pieces upon a geopolitical chessboard. They were not omnipotent gods, but flawed masters pulling strings. Their triumphs demanded denial. Their failures demanded silence. In their world, morality bent beneath necessity. For Nasir Karim, destiny was not decided in Gaza's streets, but in hidden chambers, where leaders played puppeteers of life and death. Nasir Karim's funeral unfolded in Gaza under sweltering September sun. Thousands poured into Shujaiya's streets, chanting his name. Draped in green flags, his body was paraded aloft, shrouded not only in cloth but in myth. The tunnel man became martyr. Hamas leaders seized the moment. Speeches framed his death as divine test, a wound demanding resistance. Children scattered flowers, mothers wept, militants fired rifles skyward. The funeral was not closure, but ignition, converting personal grief into collective fury against Israel's shadow war. International reactions mirrored Gaza's streets. Iran praised his engineering jihad. Turkey condemned his killing. Israel remained silent, issuing neither confirmation nor denial. The absence of acknowledgement only magnified the aura, making Room 913's story linger as whispered prophecy. For Gaza's youth, Nasir became legend overnight. His tunnels were no longer just passageways of earth but metaphors of defiance. His funeral carved him into memory not as victim, but as architect, immortalized in chants echoing across rubble-lined boulevards. Nasir Karim's death created a vacuum Hamas scrambled to fill. Younger engineers attempted to replicate his tunnels, but none matched his precision. Collapses increased, projects slowed, and whispers spread that without the tunnel man, Gaza's underground empire was crumbling silently. Israel capitalized swiftly. Military campaigns targeted half-built shafts, airstrikes collapsing newly discovered tunnels. Officials proclaimed victory, arguing that Nasir's elimination dismantled Hamas's subterranean backbone. Yet intelligence analysts cautioned, martyrdom fuels replacement, and legends often outlive infrastructure, seeding generations of successors. Within Hamas, internal rivalries sharpened. Competing commanders jostled for influence, each claiming ties to Nasir's legacy. Some preached expansion of rocket programs, others pushed for cyber warfare. The absence of his steady engineering vision left Hamas torn between fragmented strategies. Internationally, the assassination deepened Gaza's isolation. Donor nations grew wary of aid misuse, while militant groups outside Palestine cited Nasir as model. His tunnels became case studies, inspiring militants in Lebanon, Yemen, and beyond. The man was gone, but his blueprint survived. In the end, Nasir Karim's death changed little in the grand scheme of geopolitics. The conflict raged on, tunnels collapsed, and new ones were dug. Yet his story illuminated a hidden battlefield where wars were fought without borders, without acknowledgement. What it revealed was darker than any tunnel. It exposed a world where states sanction killers, where identities are forged like weapons, where silence is strategy. In shadows of hotels and corridors of power, truth remains buried, alongside those erased.